It's not what you see, it's how you see it. And if you've been following me on this channel for a while, you know that it's something that I live by photographically. In fact, that saying spawned one of the playlists on this channel, which is Neighborhood Photographer. Why? Because unless we're travel photographers, dedicated travel photographers, we spend most of our time actually shooting in and around our neighborhood. And our neighborhood starts in our home. So today on Neighborhood Photographer, our macro photography project is going to be something that, hey, maybe we look at and we don't really think about shooting it, but actually it may very well be worth shooting. So our macro photography project for today is color pencils. Now, that's something that you may have hanging around the house. Maybe your kids have a set of color pencils, or as is the case with me, I have this set of original color pencils from the 60s. And you can tell they're from the 60s because the price on them is $2.19, something that we haven't seen for decades and decades. So here's the set of 24. Now, the only thing you need to do before we get going is you need to sharpen these pencils. Now, you may be looking at them and saying, hey, you know, they're sharp enough, I don't need to sharpen them. I'm going to ask you to sharpen your pencils because there's something that we're going to do at the very end of the video that is kind of cool and kind of important, so you have to sharpen your pencils before you get started, okay? So, it's not what you see, it's how you see it. Let's see how we see something as simple as color pencils. Obviously, there's a million different ways that you can do this, and here's one way. What I did was I grabbed a box, as you can see here, and I wanted the pencils for this particular shot to be more or less all the same level. More or less. Doesn't have to be exact. And so I used some duct tape here and taped them together, and we came up with something like this for the first shot. All right, so this is a macro shot. You're right in there, and I've isolated 5 different pencils, and look at it. I mean, look at the clarity here. Look at the wood here. Look at this. It's so clear, and that's what, you know, macro photography is all about, in terms of, you know, showing something in a way that you wouldn't normally see it. Your eye doesn't. You don't usually get down this close with your eye. I don't even know if you can, in order to see these pencils like that. But that's the beauty of this. The color is nice, but it's the detail, it's the texture. Now, if you're not sure about how to focus this clearly, because when you're focusing through the viewfinder, you may or may not get it as clear as this, but there's a way to do it with your LCD, and I did a video on that. So I think at the top of the screen right now, you can see the link if you want to see how to make your macro photography crystal clear in terms of its focus. How about this one? Okay, now they're lined up again. This time, though, I've used a shallow depth of field. In fact, the depth of field I set was f2.5. So the aperture is wide open for this particular macro lens that I have. And not only did I just single out one pencil, but I also darkened in Photoshop. I did darken the front here, and I darkened the back, so that not only are these pencils out of focus, but they're also diminished in terms of looking at them. So you kind of you're forced to look at this brighter object, the sharper object in the middle. Okay, here's another setup. On the top of that box, I've laid the pencils down. I've just put them in a little container here, but I've laid the pencils down to take this. All right, so again, not the way you would normally see it. You see the color, you see the shape, and you see the texture. Now, one thing I didn't do here very well, here, you see these two down here, these two pencils, and this one over here, and this over here, and this over here to a certain extent. They're not exactly the same level. You see what I mean? This is it down here. They're not exactly flat. They're not exactly flush with each other. And because of that, and because there's such a shallow depth of field, what's happening is they're not in focus like these ones are. So if you want to have them all in perfect focus, make sure that they're all exactly flat. turn them around, and you get the front of the pencils. This is, I mean, you would never see this with the naked eye, not like this. I mean, look at this, the tip of the pencils. And they're all, look like they're all looking at you or something. It's a very strange way to see color pencils. But again, macro photography allows you to do that. The typical shot, you know, line them up, turn them diagonal, and, you know, take your shot. So now I've been shooting this. This is a shot on a black velvet cloth, and it really works well because it's velvet, it's flat, so there's no reflection on it. I love that about it. The one thing that you have to be careful about, though, with this kind of thing is often lint will collect up on it, just little bits. So in your post-processing, make sure that you go through and pick off all the little pieces of lint, just kind of clone them out, all right? And you come up with something like this, all right? That's one way to look at it. Or how about setting it up a little bit differently? Moving them all a little bit closer, add a few more pencils into the equation to come up with something like this. Now we're getting somewhere. Or how about dialing in even closer for something like that? And of course, again, you have to be careful because now you're seeing everything. I mean, here, okay, you see it very clearly. But now when you come in really close, you have to be careful. I left a gap here. Maybe you want to just tighten that up a little bit to make sure that everything is the way you want it, because your eye will not miss anything with this macro photography. This was taken by using a longer exposure, 2 seconds, all right? Now I've got the pencils in front of the lens. I'm shooting at about f11. Now the reason why I'm shooting at f11, it's not because I need more depth of field. I'm shooting at f11 because I'm trying to get my camera shutter speed to at least 1 second and preferably 2 or 2.5 seconds. So it's at f11. I'm shooting at ISO 100, and I'm just gently waving the pencils in front of the lens, just a gentle little wave in front of the lens vertically, all right? And you come up with something like this. But this next one I really like, because here I tilted the pencils on an angle to come up with something like this. Now, you can use that just as an abstract image on its own, or save it and use it as a background for something else later on, for another project that you may be working on. It can be very, very good as a background, but it kind of makes a neat abstract image too. You're not really sure what that is, but those are the colored pencils on a little bit of an angle, just being waved in front of the lens. Again, a 2-second exposure. Now, at the top of the show, I mentioned that I wanted you to sharpen your pencils, even if they didn't need sharpening. And the reason for that was, hey, take a picture of the shavings. Why not? Macro photography. Again, not the way you would normally see the shavings of a pencil, but you can see the shavings here, and you can see the actual bits of the pencil all through here. And you can do all kinds of different things with this sort of thing, but that's why I wanted you to sharpen the pencils. For all you macro photography maniacs out there, and there are a lot of you, I hope that got your macro juices going, because you know something, the color pencils are lots of fun, but there are lots of other things around your home that you can use, things that are colorful, okay? So it's a starting point, and I hope it got you going. Until next time, I'm Ray Scott, reminding you that it's not what you see, it's how you see it. And I'll see you soon.